So those who haven't been with us before, at the beginning of our meetings, we apply the Serenity Prayer to our gardens. Now, those of you who are in Fresno, you don't have some of the same difficulties that we have up here, like deer and all that, but I'm sure you'll share yours with us. So as we begin to think about filling our yards with native plants, we ask for the serenity to accept the things we cannot change in our gardens up here, and they are myriad. We ask for courage to change the things we can in our gardens, and usually that ends up being our own attitudes and how we feel about the wildlife and other entrants to our garden whose doings we can begin to view in a different light, perhaps, than one that troubles us. And the wisdom to know the difference, which is, of course, all of our goal. And we review the mission of our Native Plants Live Here group, which is to inspire Yosemite Lakes Park residents to fall in love with their property by planting California natives and stewarding their existing native treasures, thus connecting to our land, our wildlife, and each other. Special welcome. There are some members of our new alliance with the California Native Plant Society from the Sequoia chapter. Maybe each of you could just unmute for a sec and say hi. Just say, hi, I'm Bill, or
Hi, I'm John.
Hi, John.
Hi, I'm Bev.
Hey, Bev. Okay, and then I think there are here some new members of our Native Plants Live Here group. Guys, we've had like 15 people sign up in the last week. And we're now 73 people, which is a little overwhelming in a really good way. So there we go. Okay, so as we usually do, I want to take a minute before we get into our main topic and have each of us just take a deep breath. And if you want to jot a couple of these things down, do. I find it's helpful for me to write them down, so I'm going to write my own down. This is just a little bit of a right brain exercise. So the side of our brain that's a little more qualitative and dreamy. Let's each think of a native feature in our yard, something we're grateful for. It can be a plant, an animal, a rock, a hillside. So let's write that thing down. And then let's describe what we value about it. And that can very much be a feeling like, you know, I feel safe when I'm under the tree, you know, anything. Or it can be purely aesthetic. The color green excites me. And then finally, keep that feature in mind as we go through everything we do tonight. Just kind of try to tuck it away in your consciousness, because at the end, when we've gotten all this information, right, all this information, we want to return to this reflective space where we can try to integrate our own personal experience in our yard with some of the information we're going to be hearing about. Okay, so our objective tonight is that having discussed questions submitted by our community and identifying something in our yards that we are grateful for, we will identify our next step in planting native in our yards. So it's my desire that when you guys leave tonight, you have a next step in mind to increase that feeling of gratitude in your yard by doing something with a native plant or a native feature. Okay, for about just a few minutes before we get to the questions, I just want to do some sharing as we do, and a couple of members will take part in that. So, inspiration. We always do a little inspiration, encouragement, and hope. Here's some inspiration. Members' Fall Gardens. This first is Bev and Jim's driveway garden. So I went out and visited Bev and Jim a couple of weeks back. And Bev, you want to take it away and just take maybe 2 minutes, and I'm going to show them these things as well.
Okay, I haven't rehearsed this, so let's hope for the best. We have this spot next to the driveway that's been lying just pretty much like this, except we dredged up some rocks. And we want to plant it with native plants. And so I asked Leslie for some help because I didn't really know where to start. So she came over and we looked around the yard and talked about what's here already. And she made some suggestions. She mentioned a number of different plants that we might want to consider. Since then, I looked them all up on the internet to see how big they would get.
Yay!
And made this terrific chart because that's my thing. So I drew the space out to scale, and I made these little circle things that you can probably see that kind of to scale and tell you how big the plant would ultimately get and how tall it would be. And so I've been shuffling them around on this rectangle, trying to come up with something that isn't just straight lines, because straight lines are what I do best. And I know that's not very artistic. So this is where I've gotten it to. I sent it to Leslie today because one thing I don't know about it is whether I should be pushing things up against each other like that, or if I should be leaving more space. And then am I even on the right track? So I did find it helpful, though, to have the little circles that I could move around. Mm-hmm. So you might want to consider that if you've got a specific space that you're trying to fill. And I just wanted to mention that I found all of these plants over at Thicket and Vine, except for the, you know what that is, Blonde Ambition,
yeah,
which they're going to get. So if you're looking for any of these plants, you might find them there as well. Looks like one-stop shopping to me.
That's awesome, Bev. And yeah, so I'm not going to go over this in any detail, but you've done a great job, assuming that your circles are in fact, assuming that all of your engineering is accurate, then where it says like 3 to 5 feet, I don't know whether you made this 3 feet or 5 feet or 4 feet.
Right, and I think it's 4.
Perfect. So what I would do, I mean, we'll talk about it in more detail, but basically you want, at mature size, you want your plants to cover the ground, but you don't want them to be smushing up against each other like a cottage garden. So you want each of them to be able to have a discrete and discernible shape in the garden. So I'll just say that for now. Okay. But guys, this is a really cool way to do it. And what I advised her to do is to go onto laspilitas.com, get the range of width, and then average it, which is how I was taught to do it by Bert Wilson, who was the originator of Las Pilitas. He said, take those, average them, and plant them that distance apart. And that has worked well for me in most cases. Thanks, Bev.
You're welcome.
And yay, we look forward to the to photographs in progress. And I see you've brought some rocks over too, which is great.
Right, and I'm sure there may be a few more rocks somewhere in my yard.
Oh yeah, I think there may be one or two if I recall correctly. Okay, cool. Now this is Darcy's driveway garden. And I don't have any before pictures, but there was none of it. Nothing was here. None of this mulch, no nothing. You want to talk a little bit about it, Darcy?
Yeah, well, first of all, Bev, I want to say I love what you did with that diagram. That is such a cool idea. I think I'm going to borrow that from you. That was great. Kind of similar, we had just this area beside our driveway. It was just dirt. I'm not sure what was there before. There were some wells and some irrigation a little bit. And I was just excited to get some native plants, kind of just jump in. I didn't give any pre-thought like Bev did, but we went up to Intermountain Nursery up in Auberry and just grabbed some plants and came back and thought, well, it's a start. We're not at the property all the time, so I wasn't sure how the plants would thrive just given the wildlife. And this is all brand new because we're coming from the city where we don't have to worry about any kind of little critters eating anything or gophers eating from underneath. So Leslie came over and bless her heart, she gave me some good guidance just on how to plant, how to protect the new plants. And so far they seem to be doing okay. We caged them all, put them all in gopher baskets, got some gorilla hair and put it about 2.5, 3 inches thick all the way down the driveway. And I'm just excited to see how they grow. We obviously are going to add more, but my husband kind of kept me in check. I could have gone wild at the nursery and just bought all kinds of stuff. But I thought, well, I better start just kind of slow and see how it goes. And so far, so good. So I'm excited and excited we'll be up there this weekend to, maybe see if we can get a few more in the ground and just go from there.
Super exciting, Darcy. Darcy's got a bunch of several celestial blue sages, I think. Is this a monkey flower? Is that what this is?
Okay, there's along the driveway, we planted the celestial blue sages. We planted a couple of penstemons.
Yes.
And I have the little stick in them that tells what each plant is, because again, they're all brand new to me. I have no experience with native plants at all. So I'm learning the names and kind of identifying, the leaves and the colors. And in fact, I stopped by the Salvia Creek garden and just kind of walked around and looked at some of the plants there and getting familiar. So honestly, Leslie, I would have to go look and see what the stick in the ground says next to it, because I'm not positive.
Don't even worry about it. You reminded me, it is a penstemon. It's a penstemon not on our list. So we'll see how you'll have to let us know how it does.
And the one there is a bee's bliss, that I do remember.
Right.
But there was so many different varieties of the penstemons that I don't remember exactly which one it was we picked.
It's all good. This is awesome. You're going to do great. Yep. And thank you so much for letting us take a look, both of you, Bev and Darcy.
Our pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay. That was the inspiration part. Here's the encouragement part. First of all, Darcy is our social media director. Thank you. So you're going to see more social media direction going on.
And I want to say, you guys jump in and post stuff so we can kind of get the conversation back and forth, and just questions or pictures, just anything that you think would be beneficial for all of us to learn and glean from. And so I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, folks, I want to encourage you. Our Facebook group and our Nextdoor group, though I think Facebook group is, they're both are places to get questions answered more efficiently than you might think. And we really, as some of the core members, we need to kind of grease the wheel a little bit there. So it'd be awesome if you just post a thing and you say, "Oh, my needle grass is coming back," you know, just even something like that. You know what I'm saying? Because, yeah, Jeannie, I see you because yours is. So I was thinking of you. And, okay, Darcy, thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay. And just very quickly, I need you guys to think about how our group best serves your needs over the next 8 months, when we probably still won't be meeting in person much. To just remind you, I visit folks' homes. We have monthly topic meetings, which is what this is. We can have in-person classes, online workshops. We have the website, we have the blog, although I feel pulled in a lot of directions, and I really need to figure out I don't need to share all that with you. I'm working on it. We have Facebook, we have Nextdoor, and we have a lot of folks that want our content, meaning they want these things that we're doing, the information and the thoughts and the questions and the answers, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to distribute that. So I welcome thoughts about all of that. This is an entrepreneurial venture, and all ideas are good ideas until they're not anymore. Okay, upcoming events. Well, I would love to have a plant sale, but since we rescheduled the garden opening to the springtime, the plant sale is up in the air. Alex at Thicket and Vine says he's willing to do a quote unquote pop-up, which would basically mean Thicket and Vine would show up at the Salvia Creek Garden one morning. Now, in that case, he would only bring, obviously, plants from his nursery. I think it would be better if we had that and Intermountain together, but to be perfectly honest, I don't have time to organize it. And I would really like somebody to step up and say, I'm going to do a native plant sale at the Salvia Creek Garden, and then, or just figure out, how to do that. I'll support you, folks will support you, but we need somebody to take the helm if that's going to happen. Patty was willing to do a lot, but I'm not going to saddle her with the whole thing if that's not within her capabilities right now. Okay, questions before we move on. I'm going to need something to drink, but oh well. Okay, Hope. In the Hope section is a really cool thing, and Audrey's here. Audrey, do you want to talk about the Welcome Committee thing and how Native Plants Live Here might be involved? I'm putting you on the spot. If you don't feel like it, just say, Leslie, you just do it.
Nope, that's fine. So we have right now it's a 28-page magazine that will go out to all the new homeowners as they buy in, and it's in full color. And we'll also put the PDF on the website. And we want to offer you guys or us a page for the plants. So you put whatever text you want, some pictures. There you go. Thank you, Bev.
Oh, is that it?
That's it. That's the last one.
And when was that published?
2018, I think.
Wow.
So we're guessing about springtime, we're going to have it out. But we're getting together every couple weeks and working on it.
And so, Audrey, if I understand correctly, you've asked us to submit a page that would be about the group and about, people who might be interested in joining the group and doing what we do. Yes. And then there's a separate aspect of it that we haven't really nailed down yet, but it's something that we've been talking about with the HOA for a while, and that is the idea of going to new homeowners to orient them to their properties, to let them know what's there, what they don't need to do. I don't know if you guys remember being new homeowners here, but it's like, oh my God, what do I need to clear? What's this oak? Should I water it? This manzanita looks dry. Should I water it? Stuff like that. Just basic don't get overwhelmed with your yard, we'll help you sort it out kind of stuff. So not about recommending plants they can plant, but just helping them figure out how to prioritize their property and what they need to take care of. And that we're hoping will go on a checklist, I think, right, Audrey?
Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
Okay, cool. All right, your questions. Here we go. I need something to drink. Can you guys chat among yourselves for a second? I completely forgot my drink. Why doesn't somebody outgoing talk for a minute? I'll be right back.
Hey, this is Bev. I actually have a question. Could be quick. I drive by Mahan's house every day and I notice that they have something blue blooming right now. And I'm wondering if they're here or if someone knows what it is. It's gorgeous.
I don't know.
No
What
luck.
road is that on?
It's on Long Hollow. I was hoping maybe they'd be on. Oh, well.
Is it, well, approximately where on Long Hollow? Is it bush or is it blue flowers or?
Well, it's a new plant. It's a young plant. And it's, I don't know. I only see it when I drive past, so I don't really have a clear image of the thing.
What are we talking about?
I was just asking what the blue plant was, the blue flower plant was at Mahan's right now. If anybody knew.
Oh, I drove by there recently. I think it might be a non-native sage. I'm not sure though.
Yeah, it's sure a beautiful shade of blue.
It sure is. Take a pic and we'll ID it.
Yeah, I'll have to walk past it instead of driving past it.
Yeah, there you go.
Be good
Okay.
for me. Thank you.
Sure. So I got a bunch of questions emailed. So what I did is I took every single one of the questions I got and I wrote them down, like for instance, and I put your names on them. I hope you don't mind, but I think it's kind of nice to acknowledge that people have participated. And then I prepared answers. So that's what I'm going to do. There's going to be a lot of information, guys, and I don't want you overwhelmed, but let's just do it. Okie dokie. Okay, first question, which was, I tried to put them in an order that makes sense. What should we be doing at this time of year? And when can we start planting? Okay, here we go. Here's what you should do at this time of year for new plantings. Clear and mulch before the weeds come. The weeds are already starting. In my yard, if I get down on my hands and knees, I see little green things. And in a month, there'll be things that I'll need to pull out with my thumb and forefinger. And in 3 months, there'll be things I have to dig out with my hand shovel. So I strongly recommend you clear and mulch any area that you want to plant. Plan your spot. I'm going to write mulch all the way through here because that's a must. It helps prevent weeds. Plant now. This is about as much of a rainy season as we may have for a while. We'll talk about that later. So we are going to have to fill in the blanks between the rainings. So it's time, full steam ahead, plant now. Mulch. New plantings need mulch to thrive. And don't just mulch right around the immediate perimeter of the plant. As much as you can do what you saw Darcy and Bev do, mulch a whole area, even if it's not immediately under a plant, do that. 3 inches deep, as much mulch as you can muster. If there are not regular rains to keep the soil around your new plants moist, then you need to make sure the soil is moist at least 1 inch into the soil. If it's not, water it deeply. Now, you will not have to water deeply often because the weather is so cool. So you don't want to drench your plants and overwater them. I probably will do with my new plantings, I'll probably water them deeply if it hasn't rained about every 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks. That's me. Take a look at your plants and see how your drainage is. But like at the Salvia Creek Garden, these plants are less than a year old. I'm not going to have folks water them until they're dry. And I don't think they're dry yet, but we can go check. So it's an art, not a science. Basically, this is the time of year, because it's cool, when you can water the heck out of your plants and they will tolerate it. So they can put on a lot of growth at this time of year or a little bit later. Okay, and the last step is to mulch, in case I hadn't mentioned it before. Next, okay, questions about that? Questions about that? Okay. Charlene says, she asks a great question that many of us have, how to work with very hard soil. So Charlene, I'm assuming that what you mean is that you put your shovel on the ground and you try to dig a hole and it's too hard to dig the hole. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
Okay, now even after the rain last week, have you tried it since that rain?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you might find it's different. Generally, unless there's something else going on, what you'll do is just dig as much as you can, fill it with water, and then dig some more and fill it with water again, and then dig some more and fill it with water again, until you have a hole that is the size of the plant you wish to plant. You don't need to dig a hole larger than what you're going to put in the hole for California native planting. Some people have various ideas about that. So if you read something different and you want to experiment, you can, but the general rule of thumb in California native plant gardening is to figure out the size of the thing you're going to put in the ground and do a hole that size. Don't go a lot deeper under any circumstances, because what you do is you keep the roots from learning where they're going to have to live. And so it's like over sheltering your child, and then they go into the world and they don't have the tools. Same deal if you give it some nice soft soil. It's eventually going to hit the hard soil. The question is, do you want it to do it when it's young and strong or when it's used to the other?
Got it.
Don't go any deeper than the hole. Don't add any things that I was told to add when I first started native plant gardening, whatever that stuff is, that gypsum or something that you put in the soil to break it down. Don't do that. Don't do what I did. Don't add anything to the soil to break it down. Water is the best solvent. Now, if it's draining super, super slowly, no matter how many times you do it, it's still draining slowly, I would avoid that hole. And if you try another spot and it's doing the same thing, it could be that that area has really heavy clay soil. In some of our properties, when they developed the houses and stuff, they scraped off so much of the topsoil that it's just the next layers down now. It doesn't have any of that soft loam on it anymore. If you mulch an area like that, eventually more organic material will decompose into it and you will develop a soil that's easier to plant in.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay. If there's an area you want to plant and the whole thing drains really, really poorly, then you want to Google native plants that tolerate clay soil or that don't need really sharp, good drainage. Okay, any questions about that?
I do have a quick question, Leslie. On the adding anything to the soil, I know in city planting, you're encouraged to add like Miracle-Gro planting mix in with it. With a native plant, do you do the same or do you just use the soil that's there naturally?
That. You just use what's there naturally. There are some kind of progressive current native plant horticulturists that have begun to experiment some with some amendments when they plant, and they're having some luck with that. The jury is still kind of out, but a lot of the working native plant landscapers have started doing it, but they're all, of course, they're all certain kinds of amendments done in a certain way. But for the most part, especially up here when it's so tough, just use what you have. And that gets you the toughest plant.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, other questions about that? And if also some of you guys pipe in, if your knowledge or experience differs from mine, feel free to speak up. We would all appreciate it.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, who's this?
This is Audrey.
Hi, Audrey.
What's the difference between small bark and shredded bark? Is there a difference?
Oh, yes. So just Google, if you Google bark nuggets and then Google shredded bark, you'll see that one of them is like a chunk and the other is like hair. And they're both really good mulches, assuming that there's no additives and that they're a good quality pine or cedar or redwood. Cedar or redwood really is the best unless you have local chippings. But with bark in particular, if you try to use it on a slope, it will all tumble downward. The shredded bark works a little bit better, especially if you're on a slope and you compress it and you wet it and you compress it. It will adhere, not perfectly, but it will adhere some, hopefully, until your vegetative cover has covered the slope. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Others? Okie dokie, moving on. I love this question. Shirlene, you have a permanent place in my heart for this question. How to tell the difference between native plants and weeds? Well, the best I can do, it's one of those live and learn things to a great degree. When I first moved to the mountains in 2001 and I was trying to figure it out, I would take pictures, I would go on the internet and just look and look and look and look and look. Now there are some better resources than there were then. And what's interesting is that around here, we tend, all of us, to have most of the same weeds. So we can help each other. I see Jeannie nodding, I see Preston nodding, I think. So what I did is I went to the Salvia Creek Garden and I found a few. And there's some that I have in my yard. So we'll talk. Here we go. Chickweed. I'm not using scientific names of the weeds for now. You can look them up if you'd like. This guy right here. You may recognize him. He gets into a mound and the mounds kind of stick to each other, and it's not horrible, but you want to pull it. It pulls out extremely easily. And in fact, for our volunteers at the garden, that's going to be a lot of their work this winter. It's not going to be watering, it's going to be weeding. So you see, for instance, over here, these are poppies. This very feathery leaf is ferny leaf is the poppy, and this broader leaf is the chickweed. So you can actually go in there and pull out the chickweed easily. It doesn't have a taproot. Here's one area at the Salvia Creek Garden. Here's a poppy. Here's one of the banes of our existence, and I have more pictures of it. It's called Fillory. People who grow here, who come here and they're new, they're like, oh, I have this pretty plant in my yard with this lovely little purple flower. Yeah. This is a dandelion, and this is mustard. Poppy, good. These guys, weeds, meaning they're undesirable in native plant gardens because they will overtake your native plants. They will use up the resources, they will use the space, and they're invasive in our ecology. They take resources away and give very little back to our ecology. So here's Fillory in more detail. Those of you who've been up here in the spring might recognize this seed pod. This is a good shot. Oops, I have more, I have more Fillory pictures. Wait a second. I think I put them in the wrong spot. Oh no. I had the coolest Fillory pictures of a whole field of them. Okay, well, sorry about that. I must have oh, here we go. Oops, okay, but you can see.
Yeah.
So sometimes they just form this thing that's like what they call a basal, it looks like a basal rosette. It might be a slightly different Fillory, I don't know, it might be. But sometimes I have an area of my yard where they cover it like a rug, where it's literally like I see nodding heads, where it's like a carpet. And the only way you can get them out is with a sharp shovel or some kind of a knife or a cutting device. This is what it looks like when it grows up a little more. This is called red stem Fillory for obvious reasons. This might not be red stem. That might be why it looks different. We might have two varieties here. And here's a field of it. Oh, I don't know if this just makes you as sad as it makes me, but I recognize this could be my property. So that's Fillory. Pull it. It has a taproot. Pull it as soon as possible. And by taproot, I mean a single root whose job is to go as deep into the ground as possible to find water in very, very dry areas. So you'll find a long root like a carrot, kind of. All right, this very prickly leaf in this green color, and if you look really closely, you'll see there's some spidery markings on these leaves. This is a non-native thistle. I don't know if it's Russian thistle, if it's star thistle. Speak up if you know, but it gets taller and it can be really pretty, but you need to pull it and do it with gloves. Very invasive, not good for our ecology, not good for your garden. And here, if we look around a little, here's some more weeds happening at Salvia Creek Garden. You can see next to this rock, there's a bunch of them. Okay, here comes mustard. I only have mustard in one area of my yard, but it's a large area and it's completely covered in it. Very deep taproot. Sometimes if it's a really slopey area, sometimes I don't even pull the root because I'm afraid the whole hillside's going to collapse if I pull it out. The best thing to do is to pull it out early in the season. So here's what it looks like super young, right here. There was another one here, this little guy right here. They're super easy to pull when they're young, not so much when they're old. Pretty yellow flower, you'll see them driving down to Fresno. You'll see fields of them. Here's a single plant. Here's a larger area against a fence. Pull them. Here is a field of them. They're all over California and they are a scourge. Okay, not a weed. This is doveweed or turkey mullein. It's a native plant. This is on a sloped area of my yard where I've planted a few natives. I have a manzanita, a couple of sages and penstemons, 2 buckwheats. Everything else is doveweed. It covers the ground. It nurses seedlings that come from the soil, meaning it provides a little bit of protection for young natives that are trying to get out of the soil. It prevents erosion. If there is bare soil under this doveweed and it rains, that soil is not going to wash off the top of the ground. It's going to stay because the rain is not going to hit it. If you have a slope with doveweed on it, leave the doveweed. It will prevent erosion. It's not a perfect erosion preventer. It's shallow rooted, but it is not a weed. Some people are bothered by the seeds and the sort of sticky or stickily leaves. Just wear gloves and give it a little bit of water if you can. It's an amazing native, and it's not a weed here, unless you choose to make it one. Again, this grows all over. Some of your slopes probably have it on it. It is a valuable native in many, many ways. It's not a weed. I don't recommend pulling it unless you have excessive amounts in parts of the garden where you just don't want it. But if you have it out in your yard, especially if you've mowed everything down and there's nothing covering the dirt, let it cover the dirt. It will protect it from erosion. And from the more of this you have, the less grasses you're going to have growing on those bare patches. Here is a deer grass at the garden with some kind of a broad-leafed, I think it's a weed growing. I don't know what it is, but whoever's there next, please try to get it out without killing the deer grass. Or maybe it's in a Bouteloua. This looks like a Bouteloua, the Blonde Ambition. Yeah. Okay, who knows what this is? It's ID time. Speak up, somebody.
You just said it.
Yes, I did.
Oh.
Chickweed.
Chickweed.
Wait.
What's this?
Fillery.
Yay. And what's the weed and what's the native?
California poppy with chickweed.
Yay. Now, this happens when you have logs in the garden like this, especially when they're mulched on one side and not the other, as most are. You're going to get a collection of weeds in here and exotic grasses. I highly recommend you pull them. They can get really big and unmanageable quickly. I wet them. I just go around in the hose, I wet it, and I just pull it. I just pull them. Sometimes a hula hoe works, or just your hand trowel. Okay. Oh, here we go. Now, this is the UC Ag and Natural Resources that do so many wonderful services for us, including the Master Gardener Program and other things. Have this organization that monitors invasive weeds. If you go to it, this is the website, or you can just Google California Invasive, Integrated Pest Management, invasive weeds. It'll help you ID them. So you go here, you click this, it sends you to a next page where you have a choice of two things. You answer the second question and it'll help you narrow down these weeds. And there are lists, there are tutorials. This is a wonderful resource. A lot of the time, like let's say somebody says to me, Leslie, I'm thinking of, planting a mimosa tree or something like that, and it's not a native. And I say, hey, I don't consult on non-natives. I secretly go home and I look them up to see if they're invasive. And if they're invasive, then I let the person know that it's something that the state of California has determined is detrimental to our overall ecology, that it spreads places we don't want it, and it's to the detriment of native plants. And this is where you can find that. You just go to the search box and you put the name of the tree in, and it's amazing. It tells you. Okie dokie?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anybody have a weed comment or question before we move on?
Yes, I do. When I first moved here, I had a cousin that lived in the park, and the first thing they told me was to make sure that when I had my helper cut the weeds in the spring, that he got rid of the doveweed. But
yeah, who's this speaking? Is this Audrey?
this is Charlene. This is
Oh, hi,
Charlene.
Julie. Yeah,
Hi.
well, but that's, that's kind of like your grandmother tells you to feed a fever and starve a cold.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of it. So it came back and it's here to stay. So I'm glad that it's not a bad weed.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Okay.
A lot of people's values, the things they choose to value or not value in their yard, is based on different values than you might have.
Right.
So their value.
It's really valuable. It's really very valuable for the seeds. The quail love it. I mean, they absolutely love the seeds. They're very tiny.
Good to know.
And I don't know why they call it doveweed, but I'm assuming maybe the dove love it too. But the quail just, you know, they'll shake mine to get the anyway, that's the big benefit for me.
Yay.
Yeah, I don't have it in my yard proper, but I have it all up and down my driveway, and now I'm just going to leave it, so that's fine.
Yay, that warms my little native heart. Okay, it was a hard question. Becky, by the way, she said her internet was being totally wacky, so she called me right before and said she couldn't come. But I got this from her and I was so upset, and I thought, oh, I hope she's wrong. So I went to the National Oceanic and Aeronautic Administration, or whatever it is, NOAA. And the truth is that it is a La Nina year, and areas north of us expect more than usual precipitation, and we and those south of us expect less than usual. Not that there's any usual anymore, but I think what that means to me is, well, profanity. I say profanity, and then I say another cruddy year. So I have to, I can't change it, so I have to learn to accept it and change my attitude about it. So I think that the way I do that is by thinking, wow, there's going to be so many beautiful days I'm going to be able to be outside gardening, and I will water regularly, and perhaps in the later spring we'll have a lot of wonderful deep rains like we did last year. We had a couple of really late wonderful ones, but the odds are that we will not have a rainy winter and early spring, or winter at least. Here's the data from the NOAA website. So this is temperatures and this is precipitation. The warmer colors indicate that it's warmer temperatures than usual, and the cooler is the opposite. Down here is the precipitation. The deeper the warm color, the amount that lower than usual precipitation we're expecting, and the opposite up here. So Northern California and Oregon and Washington could be in Washington and Oregon could be in decent shape, but chances are we won't be. Drier than normal and warmer than normal, whatever normal means. So it's just a reality. So I say, nevertheless, we persevere. We plant correctly, and when we plant, we water the heck out of it as deep as we can, and we put a sprinkler on it for 5 hours, and I'm not kidding. Monitor the moisture around the new plants, and support the plants through summers 1 and 2, maybe even 3, with regular deep watering. Oh, when can we stop so deeply watering the stuff planted this past spring? I think I've answered that, haven't I? Okay, cool. Oh, I love this question. Is Karen or Bob Shirey here? I guess not. Okay.
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, hi, you guys. Okay, I loved this question. It reminds me to remind everybody to get some poppy seeds if you want some, and to remind you that you can get them from Theodore Payne, the Theodore Payne Foundation online, or you can get them from Larner Seeds online, or I think probably S&S Seeds online. I wouldn't recommend any other sources. So yes, it's time. Because if you wait for consistent rains, you could be waiting a really long time. So what I did is last week, I waited till the rain was over, and then I threw some out, which was the opposite of what I was supposed to have done. I was going to go out and put them out the night before the rain, but I didn't. So I went out the morning after the rain. I put some out. I was supposed to have watered it since then, and I haven't. So don't do what I do. Do what they say to do. It's time to sow California native wildflower seeds, including poppies. From our experience, we've learned around here, it's best on mulch, either gravel, DG, or organic mulch, just right on top of it. Keep the seeds wet if it's not raining. If it rains, a couple days later, just keep them wet. That's how they like to germinate. They need to be moist to germinate. Sow more than once. Do it every couple of weeks, every week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks. Do some more.
I sowed that first rain we had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then I sowed again the last rain. I was out today, and the first ones I sowed are up already.
No way.
Poppy seeds are definitely coming up. Yeah. I was pretty shocked.
Were you thrilled?
Yeah, it's all in the new Corona garden area.
Oh, that's
All of them all.
fantastic.
Well,
And is it, it's your rock mulch?
no, it's wood mulch,
Awesome.
bad mulch.
Remember, as you're broadcasting the seed is what they call it, as you're broadcasting it, remember to put it in cracks, put it between rocks. It tends to be happy there. You might choose to mix it with some sand or dirt in order to distribute it more evenly. Best times before a rain. But when there is no rain, sow it and water it. Questions there? Also, I have been doing a little bit of YLP guerrilla gardening with my poppy seeds. So what I did is I'm on a 4-way corner, if that makes sense. And I threw out seed on all 4 corners. I don't think that people will mind if you just throw some poppy seeds out. But I wouldn't do it right at the road because they spray. And that would be sad. Okay, questions? Okay, Bill Neveu, are you here?
No.
Okay, cool. He's not here, but it's still a good question. Where can we get live plants now? Here you go. This is the best answer I can give you right now. Locally, Intermountain and Thicket and Vine. Online, Las Palitas or Mountain Valley Growers. I don't use Annie's annuals anymore for anything except annual plants, meaning like if I want some poppy plants or if I want some sunflowers. All of my perennials over the years have failed. And I kept doing it. And I think it's just too cold here or something. And people used to say it to me and I kept poo-pooing what they were saying. And now I realize I was the one who should have been poo-pooed. So I don't recommend Annie's annuals unless you want some sunflowers, little sunflowers or wildflowers up here. Those of you who don't live here, you may have better luck with Annie's annuals. If you're in the valley, I think it would work better. Okay, if you want to take a road trip, the places I can recommend right now, there are others, are East Bay Wilds in Oakland. We got a bunch of our plants there for the Salvia Creek Garden. Thank you, Paula and Bill. Theodore Payne Foundation in the San Fernando Valley. You can shop online in their online store and they will pull the plants for you. All you need to do is pull up and load them in, which I think is pretty amazing. And Las Palitas Nursery, which is in Santa Margarita. William and Nancy went there last year. They're doing the same thing. They're pulling plants for pickup, if I understand correctly. You'll need to check. There are a number of other wonderful native plant nurseries, but I need to be diligent and only name the places that I know personally, that I've gotten plants at. Questions? And Sequoia chapter folks, if you have anything to chime in with, please do. Okay. Well, Bill said, how about a list? So he won't see this, but there's 2 lists on the website, on the resources page, to remind you guys. One of them is the YLP plant winners list with 2 sides to it. Make sure you read the notes. They're really helpful. I haven't updated them this fall, but they're still good. And that you can download that or see it on the resources page of the website. Same thing with the plant list for our demo garden. On the resources page, it says stuff especially for our group. And then it says Salvia Creek Garden plant list. You can click there for the plant list. Between those 2 lists, you have a really good start at a native plant garden. When you go to the nurseries and they talk you into other stuff, just consider it more of an experiment, okay? Because these are tried and true and deer proof, unless I say something about that over here. Deer proof here. Okay, Faith, are you here? Shoot. I did like a whole Megillah for Faith. Megillah means a big, long story. But that's cool because you know what? We could have a whole meeting on this. How many folks, can we raise hands here? How many folks have a steep slope that they would like to stabilize? Oh boy, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have to go to the next page. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And, oh, hi, Marianne. Okay. Number 1, how to stabilize a slope. Such an important question. I can only totally scratch the surface. It's one of the hardest things ever. And after fire in particular, it becomes a huge issue. So at Intermountain Nursery, for instance, last weekend, they had a whole workshop on how they're beginning to approach some of the denuded hillsides that burned and how to begin to revegetate them. Professional land restorers are paid lots of money to do this. Some do it well and some just don't. So we're up against it, but it can be done. And I was going to give you a couple of pictures of slopes at my house that I've over the years that I'd say are about 80% there. I know that some of you, like I think Nancy and Will maybe, and some other people planted on some slopes. Paula, I think you did at the top of a slope, you planted some things and you're beginning to do that. So here's the principle, you guys. I'm going to go to this web page. Let's see, I might have to share. Can you see that, or do I need to? Yes?
There.
You can see the Las Politas website that I shared? No? Okay. Let me stop the share. Let me share again and share the different screen. Here we go. How's that?
Okay.
Yes? Okay. Here's this link. It's the laspilitas.com, and then it's /garden/how-to/slope. Now, there's a load of information here. Bert was a grump, but he was super smart. So he did not mince words. You don't have to do everything he says, but there are some general principles that are super important. Here they are. I'm going to go back I'm just showing you roughly the page that I highly recommend. And there's a 3-part video thing of this slope that he's talking about.
Okay, here's about a 10-foot
shoot.
slope.
Sorry. Okay, I'm going back, so I'm going to stop the share and go back to my thingy. Okay. 3 main principles, guys, to think about on your slopes. Number 1, why does dirt erode? It erodes because it's loose, right? Number 1, it's loose. Number 2, it erodes because this loose dirt is hit by water, and the water causes it to flow downhill. Number 3, when that happens, the soil has been a bit disturbed, and the exotic weeds, grasses mostly, will take over on the hillside. And you get these hillsides like we have all over YLP, where you just see this slope and all these grass, and you just want to tear your hair out if you own the property, because you want to do something, but you don't know what to do. So what you're going to want to do is to cover the hillside with a diverse groupings of native plants. You want them to be deep rooted. You want there to be a combination of low, medium, and tall plants so that among them, they end up shielding the hillside from the rain. So that's the principle. It's very physical. And also the roots, if they're native plants, the roots will tend to form a network underground that adds increasing levels of stability to the ground. So look at his website, Google it in general. Places in California have had a terrible time because they made choices, for instance, on some of the hillsides on the coastal areas in Santa Cruz. They used something called ice plant that is very shallow rooted. They were trying to stabilize the slope. And I see you, Mr. Redwood, smiling and nodding. Would you like to talk about that just a little? Or you don't have to, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I grew up in Salinas, so I'm very familiar with the ice plants along 101 and Highway 1. They use it extensively forever. Hopefully they still don't.
Yeah. In fact, they still do, but apparently it's a slightly different kind of ice plant they're using now that isn't quite as bad from what I understand, but don't quote me. So yeah, the idea, guys, that I said ice plants is because some of the things that we might choose to plant because they're pretty and they cover fast are really shallow rooted, and they're really not going to help your slope much at all. So I highly recommend that you read Bert's thing. You plant combinations of native grasses, buckwheat, ground cover sages. Up toward the top of the slope, you're going to want to plant a couple of trees or native shrubs that the deer won't get to. Really important question. We can have a whole class on it. We can do a whole project on it if you guys want to. I put these here again, Jimson weed and turkey mullein, because those, if you have those on your slopes, leave them. At least you have a bit of a start. Okay, moving on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go back one page. I know her, so I'm sending her screenshots.
You know who?
Faith. She's the one that asked the question.
Oh, awesome. Thank
So
you.
if you can go back one page, I'll take a picture of it.
Absolutely. I sent her actually last night, I sent her the link, but it's okay because she should get a copy of this, which is kind of a summary.
How about number 54?
54. And she's in Goldside, right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Will deer grass grow in a more shaded area? Everything I've read says to plant it in the sun. Okay, so here's the deal. Full shade, no. So if there's like if you have a big oak tree, Darcy, and I think you do have a number of them, you don't want to plant them deep under the oaks where there's a lot of shade. But when you get out toward the edge of the canopy of the oak where there's nice sun coming in that's kind of filtered and high up, they do great there. If they actually do have sun for a significant part of the day, I mean, if they do have some shade, a significant part of the day, you'll find them to take on a habit that's more, that's kind of like decumbent, or I don't know if I use that word right, but rather than being really super upright, they more look like they're snoozing. They can be quite beautiful like that.
Floppy
Yeah, a whole bunch of them planted together, decumbent like that, are stunning. This is from a property in Oakhurst up John West Road or something like that, where they're just growing wild under live oaks. And they were in both, it was the middle of the day last fall or winter, but a number of them were in significant shade. And you can even see here, they're not quite as big. They don't have as many blooming stems. They kind of spread out a little more, but they're quite beautiful. And if you can get them to cover a huge area, well, guess what you're not going to have in that area? Weeds. You're going to have instead a native, little native area. So to answer your question, Darcy, it'll do fine in partial shade as long as it's not more than partial. It needs to have some good sun for a good part of the day, but it doesn't have to be all day. And it doesn't have to be full sun.
And they stay a lot greener than the ones that are in the sun. A lot.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
They stay a lot greener than the ones in the sun. I have some under actually pretty deep oak, and they, like you say, they don't send up as much stalk. They're floppy, but they stay very green compared to the ones in the sun. You don't have to rake. You don't have to rake them as much.
Interesting. Awesome. Thank you.
I don't know. I guess I rake my old ones. I don't know if other people do, if they just cut them, but I rake
Yeah,
them.
actually, thank you for saying that, because that was the next question. It was, do Bouteloua, Blonde Ambition, and Deergrass ever get cut back? If so, when and by how much? Okay. Number one, in terms of cutting back, Deergrass generally, depending on your particular one and how enthusiastically it's growing, I cut mine back every 2 to 3 years. Every time I do it, I'm scared. Every time I do it, it grows back beautifully, but I'm scared every time I do it. Cut it to 3 inches or so from the ground in late winter or early spring. Be careful not to wait too long, because if as the weather warms up a bit, that's when deergrass starts to grow greener. And if you wait a little too long and you cut it down, the tips of the deergrass get cut and they're not pointy anymore. They're broken at the top and they brown a little. Still better than nothing, but better earlier than later. Blonde Ambition is a different kind of grass. You cut it back every year to the ground in the late winter to early spring before the green starts. But that one, if the green starts and before you cut it to the ground, it's okay, because those blades are so narrow that you can't tell if you've snipped them off at the end. I found a really wonderful YouTube video on Blonde Ambition that you might want to look at if you're growing it. Where is I embedded it, but here you go. If you just Google how to cut Blonde Ambition blue grama grass in spring, you'll find this video. There she is, and she does a great job. So there it all is. She talks all about it, and then hers are quite old. See how big it's gotten? So she must have cut it back every year. And now it has this wonderful, what they call a bun.
Okay, so this is our Blonde Ambition blue grama grass that has been cut back for spring. You can see that we've cut back as far as we can to ground level, and we've gone ahead and cut back the little tips of the new growth along with the old growth.
Okay. Now, Preston, describe the combing that you do with your deer grass, please, if you wouldn't mind.
I take a rake, a regular, a big rake, and I just, all the dead grass that's in there, I just put it in and start like combing through it and pulling out as much dead as I can. And then you're left with more green. You can't get it all, but you can get a lot of the dead stuff out that way. And I take it around I stick the rake in underneath where it lays down and then pull up. So not to break the green parts.
I do a lot of it with my gloved hands too. You can get a whole lot of it out with your gloved hands. And if you want to get those brown spikes out, if you really want to refresh it without cutting it back, a lot of the time you can literally just give it a sharp yank and the spikes will come out. Sometimes you do want to take them out, you might want to, just to give it a kind of a haircut. But yeah, strongly recommend. Otherwise, what happens with your deer grass is that bun that you saw, that blondish, the deer grass one isn't that neat or clean. It becomes this huge hunk. You can, after a couple of years of the deer grass being in the ground, if it makes a nice clump, you can go in and cut out part of it and replant it. You can divide it in that way. And you'll see that it will pull out kind of in sections. So you can do that, especially up here when you want to plant, 27 deer grasses, and it's $270 if you get them all in gallons, So
When I first started, when I got some really big clumps up here, I dug them completely up and I took a Sawzall and I cut them into like 10 different pieces so that I could plant a whole bunch more.
awesome.
And that worked great. I mean, it's
Awesome.
brutal. I like that.
All right, then I'll have you come over and do mine if you don't mind, Preston. Okay. Okay, cool. You guys cool with that?
Yeah.
Your needle grasses need to be cut completely back, but if you haven't done it already, you'll notice that now you've got green with the brown. So if you're crazy like I am, you go in with a tiny little pair of snippers and you cut out a lot of the brown, but you do whatever you like. Okay. Topics that come up all the time, we're not covering them tonight. Deer, rabbits, gophers, squirrels in the native garden, mistletoe, and fire. It would be much easier to avoid these topics. We must not avoid them. We must face them, but not tonight. Now, Paula kindly reminded me, hey, let's talk again about California Native Plant Society and how we join. So, here's what you do. And Jeannie and Patty, thank you for joining. Yay, most of our steering committee has joined, which is wonderful. And we have Janine is a member of both us and CNPS. And another member, I think it was Bonnie, at that Saturday walkthrough. Do you remember there were two folks there, two of our members who said they were members of CNPS? Anyway.
I joined too.
Oh, awesome, Preston. And you were able to join Sequoia chapter?
Yes.
Great. Okay, cool. So you go to cnps.org and you, right on the front page, it says something like join. Click that and you come to this page. You can join for $25 a year, which is a membership to California Native Plant Society, which means certain things that you'll see on the website. It's also a subscription to their wonderful magazines. There's a horticulture magazine, and there's also a conservation magazine, which contains more information about endangered plants and conservation efforts and that kind of thing. And okay. Just a picture from the spring in my garden, because I could.
I do have a question before is there still time for a question?
Absolutely.
I got some prickly poppy seed, which I'm not familiar with. The flower looks like Matia poppy,
Yeah.
but it's an annual. And I'm supposed to burn it before I do it. And I want to know if anybody's done that. You put pine needle, I guess you sow it and you put pine needles over it and then you burn that. And then you water it after it's cool. Has anybody done that?
I have burned seed, but I've done it in a metal bowl. I've never done it in the ground.
So when you do it in a metal bowl, how do you see the seeds afterwards? Or you just assume they're there and spread them?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? But I think I did a larger seed. I think I was doing maybe lupins or. Can you find any YouTube videos about it, Preston?
I haven't looked yet. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Yeah. Anyway, it's called ARGEMONE, Unita, and it's supposed to be kind of a nasty plant in terms of thorns and stuff, but I think it might work well on the hill here. So
Awesome. And
it is a native.
didn't you also plant a whole bunch of the Bouteloua?
Yes. Yeah, I haven't seen any of that coming up yet.
Okay. All right. We really don't have time for any more questions. Although at the very, very end, we might have a couple of minutes. But I'd like to take a minute to just kind of return to a more reflective mode, if we could. So let's kind of go back to our own properties for a minute. And let's think back, I don't even remember what I had chosen, to the feature, okay, now I remember, to the feature that we selected at the beginning, the one that we valued or that we felt grateful for. And I want you to take about 2 minutes of quiet time. Can you tell I was a high school teacher? And think of what you can do next to recreate that feeling with something else in your yard. Meaning, if there's a bunch of something that makes you feel a certain way, can you get a bunch of something else that might do the same thing? If you've got a manzanita that makes you ecstatic, is there a spot you can put in another manzanita, etc. Let's take about 2 minutes and think about that very specifically. And the research shows that if you write it down, you are more likely to process it thoroughly. Okay. Would anybody like to share? a brave soul, someone who hasn't spoken out yet today, maybe?
I'll share, Leslie. I don't mind.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay. I said I was thankful for a manzanita bush. It actually looks like a tree that grows out of a rocky hillside because it persists and it grows. It's grown quite a bit since I moved here, and it gets no love from me at all. Except I love to look at it, but it's at the end of the house where there are no windows, so I have to intentionally walk over there to enjoy it. So I want to plant some of those where I can see them from the windows of the house.
Awesome,
That's good.
awesome. Somebody else? Okie dokie. Okay, well, we have actually about 2 minutes for questions. If anyone would like another question. Yeah, Paula.
Did I understand that we should be cutting back the needle grass right now?
Well, take a look at your needle grass and see if it's brown. If it's brown, I would cut back the brown, because what needlegrass does, it's a cool season grass, which means that it puts out its new growth during the cool weather. And this is the cool weather. So by the end of summer, again, it'll be all brown again. So you want to cut the brown back and make room for the new green. Now, if it's already got a bunch of the green and it's still got the brown, I wouldn't worry about it this year because they're so young.
It is young, and the green is maybe 3 inches up, and then it's brown.
So I would cut off the brown that you can
Okay.
without hitting the green.
I can.
And then
Okay.
next year, hit it a little bit earlier. I think that's great. Is that
Thank
doing
you.
okay at the top of that slope?
Yeah, and I put one in another place, so I have 3 of them that all are similar green and brown ratio. So I'll cut off the brown.
You might begin seeing seedlings pop up.
Excellent.
Let's see, but I think you might. So be careful if you're weeding there. If you see
Okay.
a bunch grass coming out, I would wait.
Yeah. Okay, delicate times, yes.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, and the poppies, I've got all sorts of little poppy babies coming up from when I didn't, they exploded. The seed pods exploded, and now I've got a bunch of babies.
That's fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
That's fantastic. I just think that there's joy. Joy comes with the poppy. I just
Well,
think,
joy has been coming from the learning that you have offered.
oh.
Spoken like an East Coast cottage garden lady.
Well, you're less East Coast cottage garden than you were a year ago.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
You're
Thank
a convert.
you. Yes.
Okay. All right. I guess we should finish up. And I'd like to do it with you know what. So I ask for the serenity to accept the things that we can't change in our gardens or in the weather, the climate. The courage to change the things we can in our gardens, like how we react to things that are difficult there. And to develop the wisdom to know the difference between those things.